It's funny how they say you can learn a lot about a person by the company they keep.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out
Yeah.
the same goes for countries, and the company they keep is their people.
Interesting.
So today we're going deep on Qatar,
Okay.
using its population pyramid as our guide.
Interesting, yeah.
It's a shape you wouldn't believe,
Really?
with this dramatic gender imbalance
Yeah.
that kind of jumps right out at you.
Mm.
We're working with some in-depth demographic analysis for this one, and I'm excited to kind of unravel the story.
Yeah.
This chart tells us about Qatar's rapid development, its reliance on migrant labor,
Right.
and the just the fascinating social dynamics at play.
Yeah.
Are you ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Small drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling, facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
Population pyramids, they're like these like x-rays. You can really see what's going on in a country, like the whole age and gender breakdown.
Right, and we've got this excerpt on like Qatar's demographics and
The pyramid itself.
yeah, to help us kind of figure this thing out. And
Because Qatar's pyramid,
truly,
well, it's shaped pretty unusually. Like, you know right away something's different.
it's true. Right off the bat, you see this huge section, like a bulge, on the male side, especially like between 20 and 50 years old.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The female side it's so much smaller.
Yeah.
It's almost like
Like someone stretched it.
stretched it out just on one side.
In that stretch, well, it shows you how much Qatar depends on all these migrant workers. Think about what's booming there.
Yeah.
Construction, energy, all those services.
Right.
Those jobs, they tend to attract, well, mainly men in that, that age range, coming in from all these other countries.
So it's not even just that there are like more men in Qatar overall.
Right.
It's that there are way more men in those specific like working ages.
Exact.
Well, the numbers are pretty mind-blowing.
Oh, for sure. We're talking like 85 to 90% of Qatar's population, they're foreigners.
Wow.
And something like 95% of their entire workforce, migrant laborers.
Just a lot.
It's huge. You don't see that kind of thing just anywhere. Really makes you think, like, how does that even work? How does that change things in Qatar?
Yeah, it's hard to even wrap your head around it. And the source, it goes even deeper into the gender ratios within each age group. Like, it gets even more extreme.
Yeah. In some of those groups, it's like almost 10 men
10 men.
for every one woman.
Whoa.
That kind of difference.
Whoa.
It's bound to have ripple effects, throughout the country, I think.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing, the kafala system that the source talks about.
Oh, right.
Can you, like, break that down, what it is and how it plays into all of this?
Okay, so imagine you're working in Qatar, but your right to work there, and even to leave the country, it's tied to one specific sponsor. That's basically the kafala system in a nutshell. It is changing, getting reforms and all that. But the fact that as a worker, you can't just switch jobs or leave without your sponsor saying it's okay, that creates a lot of, imbalance,
That sounds, yeah.
Not a lot of power for the workers there.
And the text even mentions, like, some personal stories of, workers who've had to deal with some tough stuff.
Yeah.
Like paying these huge fees just to get recruited for the job.
Oh, yeah.
Ending up in debt or even being taken advantage of.
Right.
Because of how the kafala system works. Makes you think
it's a real problem.
It's not just like numbers on a page.
No, not at all. And it's also not just about men in construction, even though, they're a big part of it.
Yeah. There are female migrant workers, too, playing a big role, although there are way fewer of them.
Okay, so that's part of why the female side of that pyramid looks so much smaller.
Exactly.
Where do most of those women work then?
You'll find a lot of them in domestic work, healthcare, education. They're really important, even if you don't see them, out there building skyscrapers.
Yeah, I see. I hadn't thought about that. So with all these nationalities coming into Qatar, I bet the whole cultural landscape is, like, really diverse.
It's a total mix. You've got all these languages, different foods, all kinds of festivals, a real blend.
Wow.
But then it also makes you wonder, how do all those different groups get along? What kind of challenges come up from having so many people, so many backgrounds, all in one place, especially when they're not all staying forever?
That's true. It can't all be, like, sunshine and roses and cultural exchange. There's got to be some bumps along the way when you're trying to, like, integrate that many people from different places, especially when so many are only there for a few years. You got it. That's something we'll get into more as we go. But first, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about remittances.
Remittances, that's when, like, workers send some of their earnings back to their families, right? Back home.
Yeah, exactly. And with, Qatar having so many migrant workers,
right,
all those remittances, that's a serious chunk of change flowing out of Qatar into other economies.
It's almost like another whole economic system.
Kinda, yeah.
On one side, you've got Qatar booming because of all those workers. And then on the other, there are all these economies, like in Southeast Asia,
right,
getting a boost from all that money coming in.
It really is. It's like this global connection.
Yeah.
The source actually talks about how those remittances, a lot of times, they're like a lifeline for the families.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Helping them pay for things like education for their kids, healthcare, even starting little businesses.
It makes you realize that, like, this whole thing, it's not just a Qatar thing.
Yeah, at all.
It affects so many other places, too.
It's a global story for sure.
Definitely. And speaking of global, remember how we were talking about that cultural mix?
The mosaic, yeah.
With all those different nationalities in Qatar? I bet there's so much cultural exchange happening.
There is, definitely. I mean, you've got people from India, the Philippines, Nepal, so many other countries, all living and working together.
It must be super vibrant culturally.
Oh, yeah. Think about it. You've got different cuisines, languages you've probably never even heard of, all these religious traditions. Wow. It's like a true melting pot.
I bet just walking down the street in Doha is like a whole sensory experience.
Probably.
Hearing all those languages, smelling different spices, seeing traditional clothes from everywhere.
I bet, yeah. You paint a good picture.
Thanks. But even though it sounds like exciting and all this cultural richness is great,
right,
we can't forget that there's also like complexity there. Right?
Oversight.
Having all those people, all those different backgrounds, it can't be all smooth sailing, can it?
Not really, no. Integrating that many people into one society, especially when a lot of them are only there for a while, it creates some unique challenges.
Yeah, like how do you even build a sense of community?
Right. When the population's always changing.
It's got to be tough for the local Qataris to, like, make those connections with the migrant workers when they know a lot of them won't be staying.
Yeah. It's almost like two different worlds trying to exist together.
Right.
And if they don't really interact, on a deeper level, that can lead to, well, misunderstandings, maybe some cultural clashes, even feelings of isolation.
So we've got this incredible growth economically because of all the workers.
Right.
But then on the other hand...
You also have the potential for social problems.
Because of those same workers.
Yeah. It's like Qatar's on this tightrope.
It does feel like that.
Trying to balance all the good stuff from a global economy with, keeping things harmonious and stable socially.
That's where things get interesting, right?
For sure. How does a country like Qatar, with this, unusual setup, how do they even approach those challenges? What can they do to make sure everyone's doing okay?
$1,000,000 questions. And I'm guessing the answers aren't simple.
Not at all.
But before we go too far, I think we need to talk about that elephant in the room.
Which is?
The kafala system. We mentioned it earlier.
Oh, yeah.
But it seems like it's at the heart of a lot of the issues for migrant workers.
True.
So I think it deserves like a deeper look. For anyone who's just joining us, can you just remind us what it is again?
Yeah.
And why it's so controversial? You're right. We can't just like brush past this kafala system. It really seems like it's like the core of the problems that migrant workers face in Qatar. So for anyone who might have missed it, can you give us a refresher? Like, what is this system and why is it such a big deal?
Okay, so think of it kind of like this. It's a sponsorship thing, right?
Qatar.
The worker's whole legal status in Qatar, it's tied to their employer. Yeah. And that employer, they're the sponsor. So to change jobs, to even leave the country, you need your sponsor's permission. even to rent an apartment sometimes.
So basically, your whole life in Qatar, if you're a migrant worker, is controlled by this one sponsor.
Pretty much. And that's where things get tricky.
That's a lot of power for one person.
It is. That's why people worry about exploitation,
Yeah.
Because the worker, they depend so much on the sponsor.
Right.
It's easy for things to go wrong. There's stories, about workers having to work crazy hours, having their passports taken away.
Oh.
Even not getting paid what they're owed.
That's terrible.
It is. It's a system that, well, even if it wasn't meant to be this way, it can easily be abused.
Yeah. Qatar has been trying to fix things.
Yeah, they've done some reforms.
But still, it sounds like the power dynamic is a problem.
It is, for sure. The reforms help, but there's still that imbalance.
Our source talked about these recruitment fees.
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain, what those are and how they make things harder for the workers?
So, a lot of times, to even get a job in Qatar, workers have to pay these agencies in their home countries just to get recruited.
Oh, wow.
And those fees, they can be thousands of dollars. Thousands. So a lot of these workers, they're already in debt before they even arrive.
That's rough, starting off in the hole like that.
Yeah, and it can be hard to climb out of that hole, when you're sending so much of your money back home to pay off those fees. But also trying to, just live in Qatar, pay your rent, your food.
And if the job is bad, they can't just quit.
Exactly. They're tied to that sponsor. Plus, they need the money to pay off those debts.
It's like a trap almost.
It's a tough situation. It really shows why there needs to be way better protection for workers.
Yeah.
And the rules, they got to be enforced, so this exploitation doesn't keep happening.
So Qatar's stuck, kind of.
Yeah.
They need the workers to keep the economy growing. But they also have to make sure those workers are treated fairly, that the system is just a balancing act, for sure.
Sounds like a huge challenge.
It is, and it goes beyond just the kafala system, too. It's about, like we were saying before, all the social stuff that comes with having so many people just passing through.
Right.
How do you build a sense of community, of belonging, when so many people are only there for a short time?
It's like, I don't know, building on sand, almost.
Yeah.
It seems impossible.
It's tough, definitely. But I don't think it's impossible. You just need to, approach it from a bunch of different angles at once, Investing in programs that help people integrate, encouraging people to learn about each other's cultures, making sure everyone has access to the same services no matter where they're from.
That sounds like a good start.
It is.
And maybe, people's attitudes need to change, too.
Oh, for sure.
Both the Qataris and the migrant workers realizing they're all part of the same society, even if it's temporary for some. That's a big one. That sense of, shared responsibility, mutual respect.
This has been a really interesting deep dive.
It has.
We started with this, crazy-looking pyramid.
Right.
And we ended up learning so much about Qatar, economically, globally, all the cultural stuff and all the challenges they're facing.
Definitely. Makes you think about how much demographics really shape a country, how it is now, and how it'll be in the future.
And to everyone listening, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What stood out to you? How do you think Qatar can deal with all these demographic things and build a future that's, sustainable and fair for everyone? A big question, and your ideas are important to that conversation.